I finally found it.
Is that the box from the stories?
The late afternoon sun hung low over the small town of Buera, casting a soft orange light across the narrow streets and quiet homes. Inside one of the houses, Amara moved slowly through her living room, gathering scattered toys and folded clothes. Her steps were tired, but not from physical work alone. It was the weight of the past year, the kind of weight that sits deep inside the chest and refuses to leave. At only 28, Amara carried grief far heavier than her age. Her husband, Kato, had died in a sudden road accident 11 months ago, leaving her alone with their 4-year-old son, Lul. Sometimes, when the evenings grew quiet like this, the silence felt like a wall closing in. She missed Kato's laugh, his warmth, the steady presence he brought into the home. Now everything felt colder, as if the house itself was mourning with her. Lul sat on the floor nearby, pushing a small wooden car in circles. He hummed softly, a tune Amara recognized. It was Kato's tune, something he used to hum when he cooked breakfast or fixed a radio. The sound caused a small ache in her chest. "Lul," she said gently, "it's almost evening. Are you hungry?" But the boy didn't answer. He was staring at the far corner of the room, his eyes focused on an empty chair near the window. His lips moved quietly, as if he were talking to someone. At first, Amara didn't think much of it. Children sometimes talk to imaginary friends, especially when lonely. Still, something about the way Lul's head tilted made her uneasy. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was only grief showing up in strange ways. Maybe Lul missed his father so much that his mind created a friend to fill the empty space. Amara turned toward the kitchen, then froze as she heard Lul whisper. A few seconds later, he lifted his small hand and pointed straight at the empty chair. His voice was soft, too soft. "Mommy," he said, "Daddy is sitting there." For the rest of that evening, Amara tried to act as if nothing strange had happened. After all, Lul was only 4. Children at his age often imagine things to comfort themselves. She told herself that grief played small tricks on young minds, especially since Lul barely understood what death truly meant. Still, a quiet discomfort settled inside her. The next morning, she tried to forget the moment. She prepared breakfast, humming softly to keep her thoughts steady. Lul climbed onto his usual seat at the dining table. But when Amara placed his plate down, he looked toward the same empty chair from the night before. He smiled at it. Then he scooted his own plate a little to the side, as if making space for someone else. "Baby," Amara said carefully, "why are you doing that?" Lul looked up at her, confused by her question. "For Daddy," he said simply. "He wants to sit with us." A cold shiver washed through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. "It's just imagination," she whispered to herself. It had to be. But meal after meal, day after day, Lul kept glancing at that chair. Sometimes he giggled softly, as if someone whispered jokes into his small ears. Other times he nodded in serious ways, like he was listening to instructions. What frightened Amara most wasn't the behavior, it was the details. One evening at dinner, Lul said, "Daddy says he likes the blue cup, not the red one." Amara's breath caught in her throat. Kato had always preferred the blue cup. Another time, Lul asked, "Mommy, why did Daddy take the long road that day?" He said it was faster. Those were words Kato had spoken on the morning he died, words no one else had heard. The uneasiness grew heavier, like a weight pressing on Amara's shoulders. She tried to push the fear away, but her mind kept circling back to the past, back to that day, back to the last angry word she had spoken to Kato. A flashback rose in her memory. The shouting, the tension in the room, Kato grabbing his keys, frustration burning in his eyes. Amara turning away, refusing to follow him outside to talk. The door closing too loudly, and her stubborn silence echoing after him. She hadn't apologized. He never returned for her to try. The memory stung like a reopened wound. Amara sat on the edge of her bed that night, her hands trembling slightly. There was fear, yes, but also something else, something deeper and more painful. A question she didn't want to ask. The days that followed grew heavier. as if the air inside the house carried a weight Amara could not explain. She tried not to look at the empty chair anymore, but her eyes always drifted toward it, afraid of what she might see or feel. The first strange incident happened on a quiet morning. Amara was sweeping the living room when she heard a soft thud behind her. She turned around and saw the framed photo of Cato lying face down on the floor. It was the only picture he had taken a month before his death, the one he liked most. She frowned. Maybe the nail was loose. Amara picked up the photo, wiped the dust from the glass, and placed it back on the shelf. She made sure it was steady. But the next day, it happened again and again. No matter how firmly she placed it, no matter how carefully she aligned it, the photo always ended up face down, as if someone didn't want to be seen. A chill began to settle inside her chest. That night, she woke to the sound of laughter. Not adult laughter, childish giggles. She rushed to Lul's room and found him lying in bed, smiling up at the ceiling. "Lul," she whispered, trying to steady her voice. "Why are you laughing?" "Daddy was tickling me," he said, still giggling. "He's funny." Amara froze. She could feel her heartbeat deep in her throat. The room felt cold, far colder than the night air outside. A small window was slightly open, but the breeze didn't explain the sharp chill that ran through her body. She closed the window gently and pulled the blanket over Lul. But even as she did, she felt something brush the side of her arm. A faint, icy sensation. She stepped back, breath shaking. By morning, the coldness seemed to settle into the walls of the house. Even when the sun was bright, a strange coolness lingered in the hallways and corners. Sometimes, Amara felt as if someone was walking behind her, only for the feeling to vanish when she turned. One afternoon, while hanging clothes outside, she saw her neighbor, Mama Tindo, passing by. The older woman had sharp eyes that noticed everything. "You look tired, Amara," she said gently. "Has the house been peaceful?" Amara hesitated. Something about Mama Tindo's voice felt knowing, almost too knowing. "There have been strange things," Amara finally admitted. "Little things. I can't explain them." Mama Tindo's face grew serious. "There are spirits that wander when their hearts are not at rest," she said softly. "Sometimes they stay close to the ones they love. Sometimes they stay because something unfinished holds them back." Amara's stomach tightened. She didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to think her home, their home, had become a resting place for a troubled spirit. But part of her, a quiet, aching part, wondered if it was really possible. Because despite the fear creeping into her heart, there was another feeling buried beneath it. A longing, a pull, a tiny hope that maybe, just maybe, Cato was still close. And that terrified her more than anything. The days continued to pass, but the tension inside the house only grew stronger. Amara felt it in the way the rooms fell silent too quickly. She felt it in the way Lul stared at corners before speaking. And she felt it most when she tried to sleep at night, her heart beating too fast, as if warning her of something she wasn't ready to face. One afternoon, as soft rain began tapping against the windows, Amara found Lul sitting quietly on the living room floor. His toys were untouched. He wasn't playing, laughing, or humming like usual. Instead, he sat with his knees pulled close, staring at the empty chair again. "Lul," she said gently, "come sit with Mommy." But he didn't move. Amara walked slowly toward him and knelt beside him. "Baby, what's wrong?" Lul lifted his head, and for the first time, Amara noticed how serious his eyes looked. Far too serious for a child his age. "Daddy said he didn't want to leave yet," he whispered. Amara felt her heart stop. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft but shaking. "He said he's still waiting," Lul replied. "He said he wasn't finished." A cold wave rolled through Amara's body. She took a slow breath, trying to steady herself, but her hands trembled. She had tried so hard to ignore the strange signs, to explain them away. But now her son was saying things no 4-year-old should ever know or even imagine. She swallowed. "Lul, when you see Daddy, what does he look like?" Lul blinked slowly, as if picturing it. "He has the same clothes he wore when he went away," he said. "The dark shirt, the one with the tear on the side." Amara's throat tightened. That was the shirt Cato had worn on the morning of his accident. She remembered it clearly, the small ripped section near the seam. She had told him she would fix it, but she never got the chance. A burning ache spread across her chest. "Does he talk to you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lul nodded. "Yes. He tells me things. He says he misses us." Tears filled Amara's eyes. Hearing those words out loud felt like reopening every wound she had tried to heal. "But he also said something else," Lul continued. His voice grew even quieter. "He said he wants you to sit with him." Amara froze. "Sit where?" she asked. Lul raised his small hand and pointed at the empty chair, his eyes wide and innocent. "In that chair," he said softly. "Daddy wants to talk to you." The room felt suddenly colder. The rain outside grew louder, like a warning. Amara's breath shook as she stared at the chair, the same chair she had avoided looking at for days. Fear twisted in her stomach. Confusion clouded her thoughts. And underneath it all, grief rose like a wave she could no longer hold back. For the first time, she wondered if this was not just imagination or childish dreams. Maybe someone or something was truly waiting for her. After Lul's confession, Amara could no longer pretend that everything was normal. The walls of the house felt tighter, the nights felt colder, and the silence carried a strange pressure, like something unseen was holding its breath. By the third night, she knew she couldn't stay trapped in her own fear. She needed answers. Real answers. Answers that a mother, a widow, and a woman still hurting deeply could understand. So the next morning, after dropping Lul at a neighbor's for playtime, Amara walked to the old part of town where Cato's mother lived. Grandma Nambi was a woman known for her wisdom and her strong beliefs about the spirit world. Even before Amara reached the gate, she felt her heartbeat racing, as if she already knew the truth would hurt. Grandma Nambi opened the door before Amara could knock, her sharp, knowing eyes studying her face. "You look troubled, my daughter," she said gently. "Come in." Amara stepped inside the dim, quiet living room. The smell of burning herbs filled the air. Pictures of family members, including Cato, decorated the walls. They sat together, and Amara didn't waste time. "Ma, strange things are happening at home," she said, her voice trembling. "Things I can't explain." Grandma Nambi leaned closer. "Tell me." Amara described everything: the chair, the falling photo frame, the cold breeze, the laughter at night, and finally, Lul's confession. When she finished, her hands were shaking in her lap. Grandma Nambi took a slow breath. "When the dead do not rest," she said softly, "it is often because their hearts left this world unfinished. Sometimes with love not spoken. Sometimes with anger not resolved. Sometimes with a promise not kept." Amara's chest tightened. "Are you saying Cato's spirit is here?" "Spirits are drawn to the places their hearts were tied to," the old woman said. "And Cato loved you. He loved Lul, but he also carried pain when he died." Amara lowered her gaze, her voice cracking. "We fought that morning. I said things I shouldn't have. He walked out angry. And then," she swallowed hard, "then he never came home." Grandma Nambi closed her eyes as if she already knew. "There's something else," she said. "Cato had planned to come back that day. He told me he had good news for you. He was going to fix things between you." Amara felt the blood drain from her face. "What good news?" she whispered. "He got the job he applied for. He wanted to surprise you." A wave of regret hit Amara so strongly she had to hold her stomach. She remembered her cold silence that morning, the stubborn anger in her voice, and the last look Cato gave her before walking out the door. He had died before she could say sorry, before she could thank him, before she could tell him she loved him. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "What if he's staying because of me?" Amara whispered. Grandma Nambi placed a firm but gentle hand on hers. "Then you must face him. You must face the pain you have buried. Spirits leave when the living finally speak the truth." Amara wiped her tears, breathing shakily. She didn't know what waited for her back home, but she knew one thing for sure. Had looked the week before he died. Amara's knees weakened. "Cato," she whispered. The light flickered. A cold breeze swept across her face, and then a soft, low exhale right behind her ear. She spun around, but no one was there. Her breathing turned shaky. She backed into the room until her legs hit the bed. "Cato, what do you want from me?" she whispered. The answer came not in words, but in movement. The photo frame on the dresser trembled, then slid forward, then fell, landing face up. Amara forced herself to walk toward it. It was the picture of their wedding day. But something was wrong. The glass wasn't broken. The frame wasn't cracked. Instead, a line of fog had formed inside the glass, shaped like a fingerprint, right on Cato's face. Amara pressed a hand to her mouth. "Cato, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The light flickered again, once, twice, then completely went out. Amara stumbled backward, her breath sharp and fast. The darkness pressed against her, thick and heavy. Then she heard it. A whisper, so soft she almost thought she imagined it. But she didn't. "Amara." Her body went cold. The voice didn't come from the hallway. It didn't come from the corner of the room. It came from the bed, from the side where Cato used to sleep. She forced herself to look. In the darkness, she could barely see the outline of the mattress, sinking slightly, as if someone had just sat down. Amara froze completely. This was no longer just a presence. No longer just a spirit passing through. Cato's ghost was growing stronger, more real, more desperate, and he wanted something from her, something she wasn't ready to face. That night, Amara tried to stay awake, but exhaustion pulled her under. She drifted into an uneasy sleep on the living room couch, hoping the presence would leave her alone if she stayed away from the bedroom. But the house had other plans. Amara woke suddenly, her eyes snapping open, not because of sound, but because of silence. A thick, unnatural silence filled the air, like the world had taken a breath and refused to let it go. Her heart thumped loudly in her chest, echoing in the stillness. Then it began. A faint scratch, soft, slow, dragging across the wall near her head. She froze. Another scratch answered it, from the opposite wall. Then another, above her, below her. A chorus of whispers began to weave through the silence, like dozens of voices trying to speak through the walls at once. Amara's breath trembled as she slowly sat up. The house was whispering. Her eyes darted to Lul's bedroom door. She needed to get to him. She needed to protect him. But fear pinned her down for several seconds as the whispers grew clearer. They weren't random sounds. They were saying her name. Amara, Amara, Amareya. The voices crawled across the walls like cold fingers, swirling around her from every direction. She stood up shakily and forced her legs toward Lul's room. The hallway felt longer than usual, stretched, distorted by the shadows moving along the walls. The whispers followed her, growing sharper, growing louder. "Amareya, don't run." Her chest tightened. Tears filled her eyes as she turned the doorknob to Lul's room. The room was dark, but she could hear Lul's soft breathing. He was asleep, peaceful, untouched by the nightmare creeping through the house. "Thank God," she whispered. She lifted him into her arms, determined to get him out of the house. But as she turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind her with a violent force that shook the walls. Lul stirred but didn't wake. Amara clutched him tighter. "Please," she whispered into the darkness. "Let us go." For a moment, the whispers stopped. Silence. Heavy silence. Then a deep, painful groan vibrated through the floorboards, shaking dust from the ceiling. Amara staggered backward. The wall beside her bulged inward, as if something behind it was pressing to break through. Then another wall did the same, and another. Shadows twisted under the paint. The whispers turned into agonized, echoing cries. "Cato," she whispered, terrified. And then everything stopped. The walls stilled. The cries faded. The pressure lifted. Silence returned abruptly. Lul shifted in her arms, blinking awake. "Mama, why's the house crying?" Her heart broke. Before she could answer, the whispers returned, this time all from a single direction. From the living room, a voice rose above the rest. Clear, deep, familiar. Amara, Cato's voice, calling her, pulling her, begging her to come. Amara clutched her son, her knees weak, her breath shaking. She knew she could no longer pretend this was grief or imagination. Cato's spirit was not just present. He was restless, growing stronger, and dangerously close to crossing the line between the living and the dead. And the house, their once peaceful home, had become the place where his sorrow echoed through every wall. Amara didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She sat on the edge of Lul's bed, holding him close even after he drifted back into peaceful dreams. Her eyes remained fixed on the door, waiting, listening, fearing the next whisper that might seep through the walls. But dawn came quietly. No more voices, no more groans, only the faint morning light slipping through the curtains. For a moment, it looked like an ordinary day. But Amara's heart knew better. Something had changed. Something had shifted. When Lul finally woke, he rubbed his eyes and smiled up at her, completely unaware of the terror from the night before. "Mama," he asked softly, "did Daddy talk to you?" Amara stiffened. She brushed his hair gently. "Lul, how do you know Daddy talks to me?" He sat up cross-legged and stared at her with a seriousness that made him look older than his small years. "Because he told me," Lul said. His voice was calm, steady. Amara swallowed hard. Last night," Lul replied, "when the walls were crying." Her heart dropped. He heard it too. "Lul, why is Daddy here?" she whispered. "Why hasn't he moved on?" The boy lowered his head and began tracing invisible shapes on the blanket with his finger. "I didn't want him to go," he said quietly. Amara blinked, confused. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lul looked up at her again, and his eyes glistened, not with fear but guilt. "I asked him to stay." Amara leaned closer, her breath catching. "Lul, how did you ask him?" The child hesitated, as if unsure whether he should tell her. Then he stood from the bed and walked slowly to his toy box. He knelt, reached inside, and pulled out a small folded paper. It was old, edges wrinkled, ink faded. Amara's heart thudded painfully. "Lul, what is that?" "This is the paper Daddy told me to hide," he whispered. Her hand shook as she reached for it. "Why, baby? Why would Daddy say that?" Lul hugged himself. His voice trembled. "Because it makes you sad." Amara unfolded the small paper with trembling fingers. Her breath hitched. Her knees threatened to buckle. It was a farewell note, written by Cato, a note she had never seen, a note Lul had kept hidden all this time. The handwriting was unmistakably Cato's, but the contents, they were a storm she was not prepared for. He had written it the morning of his accident. "If anything happens to me, I need you to know this wasn't just fate. I've been hurting in ways I never told you. I'm sorry I carry my pain alone." Amara pressed the note to her chest, tears spilling down her cheeks. Cato wasn't just reaching from the other side because of love. He was here because he left with regret, with unfinished words, with wounds he never shared. Her hand shook violently. "Lul, why didn't you show me this before?" The child hesitated, then whispered something that froze every part of her body. "Because Daddy said he couldn't leave until you read it. He said you didn't hear him when he was alive. So now he's trying again." Amara felt a chill crawl up her spine. The presence in their house wasn't only haunting, it was pleading. Cato's ghost wanted to be heard, to be understood, to be forgiven. And until that happened, he wasn't going anywhere. The house was too quiet that night. No crickets, no wind, no distant voices from neighbors returning home late. Just silence, heavy, waiting, almost breathing with her. Amara stood in the doorway of the living room, staring at the empty chair. The same chair Lul always pointed at. The same chair that felt like the center of every strange thing happening in their home. Tonight, it felt different. It felt occupied. Her heart beat painfully in her chest. Her hands were cold, but she forced her feet to move. Lul stood behind her, clutching the edge of her dress. His voice was shaky. "Mama, Daddy is here again." Amara closed her eyes, drawing in a slow, trembling breath. She had avoided this moment for too long. Running from it had only made the shadows stronger. She turned to her son. "Lul, go to your room and sit on your bed. Don't come out until I call you. Do you understand?" He looked scared, but he nodded. Amara watched him walk down the hallway before turning back to the chair. The air around it felt colder, like winter trapped in one corner of the room. She stepped forward. Her legs were weak, but her resolve was firm. "Cato," she whispered, her voice cracking. "If you're here, I need you to listen." The room shifted. Not visibly, but she felt it, as if the air tightened, as if something unseen leaned closer. Amara sank slowly onto the opposite seat, facing the empty chair like she was meeting someone who never stopped loving and never stopped hurting. Her breath trembled as she began. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for the fight we had, for the words I threw at you like stones. I was tired. I was scared. But I never wanted you to leave this world with anger in your heart." The house creaked softly. Her fingers twisted together. "I should have listened to you," she said. "I should have asked what you were going through. You carried so much alone, Cato, and I didn't see it." A cold breeze slid across her cheeks, but instead of fear, she felt sadness. Pure, deep sadness. She placed a farewell note on her lap. "I found your message," she whispered. "The one you left behind." Lul showed me. The air shifted again, stronger this time. Like a silent answer. Tears trickled down her face. "I forgive you," she said, voice breaking, "for walking out that day, for hiding your pain, for leaving without letting me help you. I forgive everything." But she swallowed. "I need you to forgive me too." The silence that followed was deep, not empty, full, like someone unseen was thinking, feeling, remembering. Amara lifted her eyes toward the chair. "I loved you then. I love you now, but you can't stay, Cato. Not like this. Not through shadows. Not through our son. Please." She pressed a hand to her heart. "Let yourself rest." For a moment, nothing changed. Then, slowly, Lul stepped out from the hallway. His eyes were half closed, as if he was listening to a soft voice only he could hear. He walked toward the empty chair, stopped beside it, and lifted his face like a child looking up at someone tall. "Mama," he whispered, "Daddy is talking." Amara froze. Lul's small hand touched the chair's armrest. "He says he heard you," Lul murmured. "And he's crying." Amara covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "And he wants to tell you something before he goes." Lul opened his eyes fully, dark, soft, shining, and whispered, "Mama, Daddy says he never wanted to leave you. Not then. Not now. But he understands." The cold air faded slowly. The heaviness in the room loosened, like the beginning of release. Amara felt her heart break and heal all in the same moment. Something was ending. Something was letting go. But first, his final words were coming. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains in a way Amara hadn't seen in months. It wasn't harsh or cold. It was warm, soft, almost golden, spreading across the room like a quiet blessing. For the first time in a long time, Amara woke without a tightness in her chest. She turned and saw Lul still asleep beside her, his tiny hands tucked under his cheek. His breathing was steady, peaceful. There was no whispering in the room, no strange coldness. No invisible eyes watching from the shadows. Just calm. Amara stroked his hair gently, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you, Cato," she whispered. When Lul finally woke, he stretched and yawned, blinking up at her with bright, rested eyes. "Good morning, Mama," he said, cheerful and light. Amara felt her heart soften completely. "Good morning, my love." They ate breakfast together, just the two of them. For the first time in weeks, Lul didn't look toward the empty chair. He didn't pause, as if listening to someone unseen. He didn't whisper to the air. The chair stood untouched, ordinary, quiet. A part of Amara still felt the ache of loss, but it was no longer sharp. It was gentle now, like a scar that hurt only when touched, not every moment of the day. Later that afternoon, she took Lul by the hand and walked to the small cemetery at the edge of town. The path was lined with tall eucalyptus trees swaying in the wind, their leaves rustling softly like distant voices. They stopped at Cato's grave. His picture, once fallen, once cold, now rested still and upright. Amara knelt down, brushing dirt and dried leaves from the stone. She placed fresh flowers beside it, her hands steady, her heart open. "Lul," she said quietly, "say something to Daddy." The little boy placed his hand on the stone and smiled. "Bye, Daddy. Mama says we'll be okay. And I'm not scared anymore." Amara felt her throat tighten, but it wasn't from pain. It was from acceptance, from healing. She looked up at the sky, the same sky Cato had gone to, the same sky he had watched over them from. I forgive you, she whispered, and I know you forgive me too. Rest now. The breeze that brushed her cheek was warm, comforting, almost like a final farewell. As they walked home, Amara felt lighter than she had in a long, long time. Sometimes the dead return not to punish us, but to complete the words left unsaid, to heal what was broken, to bring peace where pain once lived. And now at last peace had come.